high atop the pastoral center of the Diocese of Camden, you're listening to Talking Catholic.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Talking Catholic. I'm Jen Morrow, and guess who's back with us today? The prodigal son has returned.
I am back, and I am very excited about it.
Hello, Mike Walsh.
Hello, Jen Morrow. How are you?
I'm great.
You know, I'm so happy about this because we got to do this very podcast 2 days in a row. Everybody, we recorded it yesterday, and it was hysterical.
It was great.
And I was not myself.
Nope.
And Jen took full advantage of it.
I did.
She was able to get good stuff out of me. She made fun of me a couple of times. It's one for the record books.
It is.
And we're going to blame Pete Sanchez for this. The battery on the Zoom device that we record on, it's not a Zoom, it's called a Zoom. It's not Zoom like everyone knows about nowadays. But this recording device that we use, the battery died halfway through the episode. And I was like, okay, well, we'll just get a new battery and we'll keep going. And nope, that whole first 25 minutes, of which I was at my weakest. So Jen was just able to go after me.
Oh, it was spectacular. And what was like extra delightful for me is that Mike Walsh was like disheveled when I came into the office and to record this. I was like, what's going on with you? You look distracted and disheveled.
And now I'm on point.
I know.
I have been battling things all day long, and I am just ready to go. I am aggressive and angry, and people have been disappointing me all day.
Angry.
I'm just good. Well, not really angry, but
okay.
But people have been showing their true colors all day. Not some of them that we work with.
All right, calm down over there.
I'm up. I'm ready to go. Yesterday was the Jen episode. Today they're getting the Mike episode.
Oh my gosh! And let me say how great it was. Like Mike sang 2 times, not on air, but before. Did you? Actually, you sang once on air too.
I did sing once on air.
And he was totally spaced out. He had had a day. Like I said, the hair on the back was sticking up a little bit, hence the disheveledness.
Yep.
And now we got regular Mike back.
Just like the Mike everyone knows and tolerates.
I know. Oh man. This is how my morning started, listeners. Mike Walsh calls and says, do you want the good news or the bad news first? And I was in a pretty good mood, so I actually said I want the good news first, and I usually do it the other way around. And
it was good news. It said, you get to spend a whole another hour with me.
That was the good news. The bad news was the podcast had not recorded.
Yeah, it was really weird because the file was there, but then when I opened up the file on the processing software, it was blank. So it was really peculiar. So I have now learned a new thing out of our little Zoom apparatus here that if the battery dies on you while you're recording, you will lose everything you just recorded. So good to know.
Well, we're still going to try to be as witty as possible. And also, I want to make sure there's some points that we do again so that listeners don't miss it.
Well, actually, we did screw some things up yesterday. We didn't screw it up, but the plan was to go day by day. Oh, that's right.
You want to tell people? Nope. Yeah. Do you want to tell people what we're going to talk about before you say day by day?
What?
We're going to talk to Mike about his trip in the Holy Land.
Day by day.
Day by day.
Right. No. But what we realized is that got us about 45 minutes into it by the time we got to day 2.
Yeah.
So we were like, you know what? We're going to hit the highlights from each region I went to instead, because you just can't do...
No.
I can't do a 14-day recap in 1 hour.
So this one, actually, you'll get more of the Holy Land, less of us bantering. But hold on. You did say some really nice things about me yesterday while you were gone. So can you say that again?
Can't remember.
Mike talked a lot about what a great job I did.
I did. You could tell I was weak because I have to say I did listen to the podcasts. You know what's interesting? Actually, let me preface this by saying I did not listen to. I am a podcast junkie, and while I was on pilgrimage, I did not listen to a single podcast, including on the flight over and back.
Oh,
yeah, I was just keeping my brain free, I guess, and I kind of wanted to be present, so I was looking at things and keeping an eye on things and thinking about things. I like looking at the countryside, and I did watch videos on the flights, but I was pretty present everywhere. However, when I got back, I then listened to the podcasts that were released in my absence, and they were outstanding. They really were. The podcast you and Donna did with Father Hyde was really excellent. It was a great conversation about his vocation, but also, he's one of our Eucharistic preachers who will be leading the Eucharistic Congress on March 25th in Camden. Get your tickets everywhere where tickets are purchased, but mostly go to the Camden Diocese website. You can find them there.
Free tickets.
Free tickets. Day-long event starts at 9. Doors open at 8 a.m. Starts at 9 a.m. Goes till like 3:30.
Yeah, 3.
And at the Waterfront Pavilion in Camden, it's going to be real nice.
Just going to keep the stream of consciousness and just repeat that over and over again.
One of the things I was working on today was the planning for the Eucharistic Congress.
Right.
So I'm happy to report that the planning is going well and the logistics seem to be going well. There's just one person who really disappointed me who didn't make the call.
Okay, all right. Can we just go back to talking about me? Well, you were saying some really nice things about me.
That's right. So the Father Hyde one was exactly. The Father Hyde episode was really good. And then the episode you did moderating the presentation with Catholic Charities was outstanding. As a matter of fact, there's a video version and a podcast version. I'm going to tell you, don't watch the video version because the podcast version, I really think, just because the manner in which it's presented, I think it resonates a little bit more. I think sometimes you can get distracted by the imagery that you're seeing on the screen.
My face. You just get distracted by my face.
Listen,
because
Kevin Hickey was one of the people who was.
We love Kevin Hickey.
We do. That man has a face for radio. So I was just thinking that it would be better to hear it on the radio. So it was good. Yeah. That was. If you've ever wondered what Catholic Charities does, and why the people who work there, it's a great presentation of that. And quite frankly, it was recorded. We recorded it knowing that we were going to put it on the podcast, but it was a presentation that wasn't in the podcast format. And you moderated the presentation itself. If it never appeared anywhere, it was still an outstanding job done by you. So really good work.
Thank you.
I'm very proud of you. Mm-hmm. One of the things when we stole you away from that Leicester Diocese was to make sure that we had more opportunities for you to shine.
Yes.
And I am so happy that we've been able to provide more opportunities for shine because you shine all over the place.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're doing a great job.
Aww.
So,
I don't even have anything witty to say to that.
I don't know, but I think you talked yourself into a raise. So good luck for you this year.
Okay, excellent. Wait, all of you are witnesses. You heard it here first.
I should also mention that today it's the HR director's last day. So we'll see what happens.
I thought you were going to say like it's opposite day or something like we're in second grade.
No. Hopefully it'll, we'll see what happens.
Okay.
But I'm rooting for you. I hope you get one.
I'm rooting for you.
Go get him, Jen. Get that raise.
Well, thank you. And welcome. Thank you for all the opportunities you give me, like this lovely podcast we're on now.
That's what good bosses do, is they find, the diamonds in the rough and they make sure that they are able to shine.
Am I a diamond in the rough?
You were before you got here. Now you're a diamond.
I don't. Let's just move on. Thank you. Thank you, Mike Walsh.
See? If yesterday's file hadn't been corrupted, we wouldn't have this opportunity right now.
This is very true.
See, the Holy Spirit works in weird ways. I've been able to compliment you and insult others simultaneously.
Yes.
I'm very proud of myself.
You are always a conundrum.
Accepted.
Yes.
All right. How was my pilgrimage?
Yes. How was your pilgrimage? And we're going to hit the highlights by region.
Yes. Although you did have a very specific question you asked me about.
And I'm going to ask it again.
Okay.
Because, that came really late. And now we're only 8 minutes in. That came at like minute 45 when I finally got my answer. So the first time we recorded it. But let's just give everybody a little
overview of what I did?
Nope. Before that. A little set the scene. Who were you with, and where did how many people were on the trip, and etc.
So we were a pilgrimage of, I think the final number, including the tour guide, was 51, but I didn't count. It was a group from primarily South Jersey and the Camden Diocese area, but we also had some folks from the Archdiocese of Philadelphia and the Diocese of Trenton. It was. Pilgrimages tend to, because they're so time consuming, retirees are usually the people who come to them. But we actually had the opportunity to have some teenagers with us, which was great. Mm-hmm. They were the best, as a matter of fact. I can't give them enough credit. We were all kind of wondering, teenagers on 14 days. I mean, that's a lot to ask of any kid.
Right.
They were, I had to go up to the mom later and tell her, like, listen, your kids are angels. They are absolute angels, and they were wonderful. They would sit at the tables with us. Like, they wouldn't necessarily sit as a family. They would sort of spread out a little bit. So they weren't sitting with their mom all the time. So we would have conversations with these guys, and 2 of them are in high school, and 1 of them's in middle school, I think.
Wow, so they were confident.
Yeah, and they would answer our questions, and they were wonderful.
Were they a delight?
They were, in fact, a delight. Now, the funniest part is as I forget where we were walking. We were walking through Jerusalem, through the old city, and I came up to their mom and I was like, "Hey, listen, your kids are great. I just want you to know that they're really wonderful, and it was a pleasure to be around them." It was like, so it was like halfway through the thing, and just as I'm telling them, or just as I finished that, the 3 kids come up and start arguing with each other the entire time, and I was like, and I turned to the mom and I went, "Well, they're still teenagers." But she laughed.
That's cute.
And they really were. We couldn't have asked for a better bunch of people, and honestly, it was a great group altogether. One of our former colleagues, Nelson Remnants, and his wife, he's the former HR director. Mm-hmm. He definitely would have gotten you a raise. Don't worry about it.
Can we call him? I don't know. Actually, I think the
current one likes you a lot too.
Yeah,
but she's leaving too, so let's hope for the best.
She's great.
So I spent a lot of time with them, and they had a blast, and it was just a great. It was a really good group of people.
So also, who was leading the pilgrimage?
So it was led by Father Robert Hughes, who's been on a couple of our episodes talking about the pilgrimage. Bishop Dennis Sullivan, our bishop, was there. Father Ray Gormley from Incarnation Church was there. And then we had a couple of different tour guides. We had one tour guide throughout Israel. His name was Rami Munayir. I think I got that pronounced correctly. And then in Italy, we had a couple of different tour guides who joined us. Frederica was our main tour guide. And then we had another tour guide in Assisi and another one in Rome. And the one in Rome, I feel bad because I can only remember she calls everyone darling, so we just took to calling her darling. But she was a sweetheart. She really was. She was a sweetheart.
So you all, I believe, left on a Thursday, if I remember correctly.
We left at 3:00 in the afternoon on a Thursday.
And you flew out of Newark because they have direct flights?
Yes, they're one of the few. Well, within driving distance, they were one of the few places where we could get a direct flight to Tel Aviv. Mm-hmm. And we did. And it was unique since we were leaving on a Thursday, arriving on a Friday before the Sabbath. The plane was, I'm not saying it was half full with Hasidic and Orthodox Jews, but it kind of felt like it was because I got to see something I'd never been able to experience. Before I even left the United States airspace, I got to see something I hadn't really been able to see, and that's to be amongst Hasidic Jews while they pray. So they have to pray throughout the day. And that's what they did. They would sort of congregate in the galleys in each of the different sections, because each section had its groupings of Hasidic Jews and Orthodox Jews. And, kind of like when you see them at the Wailing Wall, or when you see them praying in New York, or the areas where I'm more familiar with them being. It was, the kind of bowing and praying and pointing in the right direction. And it was great. It was like, and they did that throughout the flight. So it was a 10-hour flight.
Okay.
And I didn't really keep track enough to tell you how many times I got up and prayed, but it kind of felt like once every 2 hours or so. Mm-hmm. And the groups kind of changed, and I couldn't figure out why they changed. And the attire changed from time to time. Like I think when they did morning prayer, they were wrapped in shawls, and they had the Torah on their forehead, and they had there was a leather band wrapped around their arms. I will admit now, I'm not up to speed on my Hasidic Judaism, but yeah, during that prayer, it was a completely different look. You looking at me like, why was the Torah wrapped around their forehead?
Because the Torah is... No,
it's a little miniature copy of the Torah that's kept in a little box, and the box is wrapped around their forehead.
Oh, you really did mean Torah.
Oh, yeah, I meant Torah.
I was looking at you like, that's not the right word.
That was the right word.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, I could be getting this screwed up, and listeners, if I did, I apologize. Because
Wow.
If everyone's wondering, I'm not Jewish. But that is my belief.
Wow.
Yeah.
I never saw that before.
Yeah. So that was kind of, and so it was the men praying, and the women, it was mostly families. So the women were with the kids in the seats. And there was, this is less surprising, but, there were kosher meals throughout. So as the stewardess were coming up and down the hallways or the pathways, or rows, columns, whatever, chicken, fish, kosher was the kind of thing. So it was great. But United Airways, and it was a great flight over. And then we get into Ben Gurion Airport. It's unique getting into Israel. Israel doesn't stamp your passport. You get, they have facial recognition technology. You put your passport in there. They capture your image. And apparently there are cameras all around Israel to keep track of you. And then it just spits out a little blue ticket, because in some countries, if you've been stamped through Israel, they will not accept your passport.
Right.
So Israel, to get around that, doesn't give you a stamp. It gives you a little blue piece of paper that you have to keep with you in your passport. And then when you go back, and I forgot to look if I still had the blue thing or not.
I was wondering if you had it. Yeah.
Yeah. They give you, then that you have to keep that with you while you're in Israel. And then when you come out, you passport again, you give them the blue thing, and then they give you a little pink thing. But in both situations, both getting in and getting out, the technology didn't work for me. I was the only one that could not get scanned for some reason. Don't know why. I'm assuming it's because I look like a creeper.
Is it because you're a superhero, technically, like secretly?
Could be it. Yeah. Could be, and they had to do it manually. So they did it
or
manually.
You're a creeper.
Or
Could go either way.
One or the other.
Yeah.
So as I was leaving Israel, it was the funniest thing. So I had to go back to manual again. And so I go over to this desk, and they check me out and run me through, and I'm fine. They give me the little pink paper, and they say, go see this guy. And I go see this guy, and I give the guy my little pink paper, and he looks at it, and he lets me through, and then he throws it into the trash. I literally went 10 feet. So they had to go through the system, give me the pink thing, give the guy the pink thing, and that's all it took.
Wow.
I feel that was the only thing I saw that was slightly inefficient while I was in Israel. Otherwise, that place knows what it's doing, man. I never felt unsafe the entire time I was there. We went in and out of the West Bank a couple of times. It was a wonderful experience. The checkpoints were fine. While I was in the West Bank, I never felt fearful. There was a big rally in Israel the night we got there. In Jerusalem, when we got to Jerusalem, and no issues with that. You kind of heard it in the distance, but it was no big deal. It was a pro Netanyahu rally. But otherwise, man, it was great. And then the other thing, I'll tell you that surprised me about Israel was the north of Israel, the area of Galilee, is lush, very green. Lush might be a hard word, but it's got green grass, green bushes. It's not the desert that you kind of think of when you think of the imagery of the Bible and the things we've seen on screen. Yeah, it's actually very nice.
So tell us about, let's just do a little bit for the first days, and then we'll go into regions. But so you land, you get to the airport, you get on a bus to your hotel.
The first place we go to is a truck stop, as one would do. So we've been on a flight for 10 hours.
Right.
And when we got in, it was like 9 a.m. when we got in, but we were kind of rushing through, so we didn't really stop. Everyone went to the bathroom, obviously. But then we didn't really hit food or anything like that.
Okay.
So as we were driving to Galilee, where we were staying for the first couple of nights, we just pulled over at an Israeli truck stop, and I got to tell you, nice truck stop, good truck stop. I had excellent truck stop pizza.
There it is.
There, I was very happy. It's kind of like a flatbed thing. The kiosks. There's 3 main languages in Israel: Arabic, Hebrew, and English. Mm-hmm. And you got to order from a kiosk, and the first thing it asks you is what language you want. You put in English and get anything you want.
What kind of pizza did you get, by the way?
It was essentially it was
cheese pizza.
It was essentially a cheese pizza.
Yeah,
but like a flatbread. But it was tasty. And what was nice was when we went to Italy later in the trip, I would say it was on par with a nice Italian, because I also had Italian truck stop pizza there. So
I'm seeing a theme emerge.
Yes. Always go to the basics when you're traveling.
Yes.
So
after the pizza.
After the pizza, we were going to Migdal, in the area where Mary Magdalene was from, Magdala, which is on the banks of Lake Galilee. And we were in a rush, so I can't recall why we were in a rush, because we got there early that day. But by the time we got up to Galilee, we had to say Mass by 3 o'clock. Mm-hmm. And we just made it through the door in time, because the place where we were staying had a chapel. And it's a great chapel because it overlooks Lake Galilee, and it's got behind the altar is all glass, so you can see Lake Galilee in the distance. I should also say, sometimes you'll hear Lake Galilee, sometimes you'll hear the Sea of Galilee. It's the exact same thing. The Sea of Galilee is a lake, so when you're there, it's just Lake Galilee.
Okay.
And then the altar itself was very unique because it was the altar was a boat. Uniquely shaped boat, but a boat nonetheless. So it was our priests were saying mass on a boat.
I love it.
Yeah.
And for anybody who didn't know, so Mike was, what is the term? Vlogging?
I was doing video travel logs.
Okay, so yeah, video travel logs, and we have a photo gallery online at CatholicStarHerald.org.
Yeah, has that been finished yet? Because I went to it today and it looked like it still only had day one. Okay.
Yeah, no.
So if
you can see Dave, you can see this boat. You can see the altar boat.
You can, or you can, if you go to the Catholic Star Herald's page and kind of scroll through the Catholic Star Herald's Facebook page.
Yeah.
You'll see all of my daily photos, and if you go to Talking Catholic, you'll see most of my video logs. I actually went in there today because Father Hughes wanted the videos offline. So I actually compiled them all together, and I was able to get all of them except one. So one day I went out to dinner without the pilgrims, and there was some alcohol had, and I hadn't recorded my video yet. So I was walking the streets of the Vatican discussing what the day was after having had a few drinks. I could not find that video anywhere. I can't find it on my phone. I can't find it on Facebook. I can't find it on Instagram. It's as if the Holy Spirit came upon us and said, we don't need a drunken Mike on the...
Come on. I don't, first off, you weren't drunk.
I wasn't.
You were not.
But
he wasn't.
I was silly, though.
He was... He was silly.
I was silly.
But at first, I was like,
I actually tried to make them whimsical.
Well, you did try to make them whimsical.
I did. Some of them I couldn't, but some I tried.
But it was, first off, that was at the very end of the trip. We're getting ahead of ourselves. But I was thinking, he's just in a great mood. It's the end of the pilgrimage. Da, 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 da. And then at the end, you give yourself up. And it's like, actually, that makes a lot more sense now. But back to day one, because I still have to ask you my question.
Okay. So, we're not going to go through it day by day.
Right.
But I will go through it regionally. So the time up in Galilee, we were at the Magdala Center in Migdal, and the Magdala Center is basically a Christian retreat. It actually looks like a resort, to tell you the truth. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have, you can't get like massages or anything like that, but it looks like a resort. And so that's where we had their breakfasts and our dinners, and that's where we stayed. And it's one of the best hotel rooms I've ever stayed in my life. It was very well appointed.
So I don't know if anybody...
But from there, we went to all of the Galilee and Northern Israel locations.
So... One of one of our podcasts right before you went on the Holy Land, we had Father Robert Hughes on and was talking about everything that you were going to see. Mm-hmm. And what was interesting is that you were landing on the Sabbath. And we start, I don't even know how, our conversations, listeners, who knows how this part happened, but we were talking about elevators because I like to ride elevators.
Why do you want to bring that up? Because I'm just going to disappoint you.
I still feel like because we have to have closure for the listeners who heard this the first time.
Okay.
So I was talking about how much I enjoy going on an elevator, and Father Hughes explained how in the Holy Land on the Sabbath,
when you ride the elevator, not necessarily every elevator, but if there's a bank of elevators, one of the elevators will do this. On the Sabbath, it stops at every floor because in Jewish culture, particularly Orthodox Jewish culture, you can't do anything, right? You have to be at rest. Mm-hmm. One of those things includes you can't start a fire. Electricity apparently is an extension of fire. So you're not allowed to do anything, not allowed to touch anything electrical.
Right.
So to help folks who live in condominiums where they're going up and down elevators and things like that, on the Sabbath, the elevators stop at every single floor.
So Mike promised that when he went there on the first day, he would ride that elevator, so he would make every stop and would send me a photo. So my soul was crushed the very first day when I was like, the day's over and I didn't get my elevator photo.
The problem was we went to only Christian sites, and in Christian sites, you don't have to follow that. Mm. And I was on the first floor of the hotel, so I never went to an elevator. I didn't use an elevator until we got to Jerusalem, and once again, it was a Christian place, so
they didn't have that elevator.
They didn't. All I can tell you is like every place else particularly in Europe, the elevators are not made for Americans.
They're tiny.
They are tiny things. So it was me and my luggage. That was all that could fit in there. But unfortunately, they were Christian elevators, so they didn't stop at every floor. But while we were up in Galilee
Yep.
in the north of Israel, the first day we went to Caesarea something. There's actually a word that follows that, but Caesarea in Israel is basically a Roman city that was on the Mediterranean and ended up being a big port city, and a city actually done in honor of Caesar by Herod, who it was Herodian. Use the word Herodian a lot. It was a Herodian city built in honor of Caesar, so it was very Roman. And a lot of it still exists, including their Colosseum, their Hippodrome, rather. Their Hippodrome is still there. What's that word called? What's the thing that's it's like a semicircle, and that's where
amphitheater.
Their amphitheater is there. And I got to sit on one of their toilets, so that was fun.
Wait, a Roman toilet?
A Roman toilet, because a Roman toilet, and the thing was, the Roman toilets were between the Hippodrome and the amphitheater, so that the people who were exposed. So you sat in public and used the facilities, so you could keep an eye on what was going on in the things. Now you're going to say to yourself, that sounds gross. And
sounds awkward.
It does, except for the fact, remember, essentially everybody wore robes, dresses. So all you really did was hike up the back of your dress, sit down, and this is where people would have a conversation. I believe it's why we refer to it as doing your business, because people would go there and conduct business. That is one of the things I learned while I was on pilgrimage.
Wait,
I'm
is that
not sure
true?
that was yes.
I mean about the conducting business.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if that's where the phrase comes from, but that's essentially what they did. Yeah. So you would converse with the people who were there. It was to which I then said to I'm going to have a conversation with my wife about this, because she can't understand why my son and I are in the bathroom separately all the time for that period of time while we're on our phones conducting business. So that must be, so we are Roman at heart.
Anytime I get a work email from you after the hours of 5 or 6 o'clock, I'm now going to worry.
I don't really have a private office anymore, so I'm going to tell you right now, 9 times out of 10.
Anyway, let's
go.
move on.
Folks, if you're wondering, this is not something that was covered in
It was
yesterday's.
definitely not. That is why this laughter is absolutely genuine.
You're getting the special stuff now.
We definitely did not cover toilets in the erased version.
So after we went to Caesarea, we went up to Haifa, and we went to Mount Carmel, which overlooks the city. It's actually another one. Every place I went to, everywhere was beautiful. So let's just get that out of the way. Every place I went to was beautiful. Done. The that one was cool because the Carmelite monastery that's there now sits over the cave of Elijah, where Elijah, his days as a Jewish prophet, that's where he spent them, and that was his cave that he stayed in. And the altar for that chapel is actually built above the cave, so you can go down, venerate the cave, come out, and you can say mass and stuff like that. But it's exposed, so you can see it. And then we went to Nazareth after that, which I think I'd forgotten about, because we went to Nazareth, and when we were in Nazareth, and we went to Canaan, which was kind of nice, because actually we recorded a Go Eagles chant video in Nazareth. When was it Nazareth or was it Canaan?
Because they were in the Super Bowl at the time.
Yeah, because the Eagles were playing the Super Bowl, and we sent it out to all the media.
Yeah,
and everybody picked up.
Did they?
It got picked up by every one of the TV stations around here, as well as the Atlantic City Press and the Courier Post.
Nice.
So yeah, it was really cool. So we did that at the Church of the Annunciation. No, not the Annunciation.
One of the churches.
I got to tell you, the problem with a 14-day journey is things start running together.
Plus, there's a lot of churches y'all visited.
We visited a lot of churches.
Yeah.
But that one was nice because we did it around a statue of Mary. We thought we'd get Mary. No, the Eagles ended up losing, but I don't think it was our fault. But while we were in Cana, all of our married pilgrims were able to renew their vows.
Aww.
And so they gave the ladies silk veils, and a rose. And the guys didn't get anything out of this, which I felt kind of bad about.
Yeah.
But Father Hughes led it, and then at the end they got a certificate that said they had renewed their vows in Cana.
That's phenomenal.
Isn't that cool?
There must have been some tears. Not by you, obviously.
Not by me. No. I was
but
laughing
the couples,
hysterically.
yeah.
But yeah, the couples really did enjoy it, and then,
that is a one in a lifetime opportunity.
yeah, and that was the first time we found out that we had a stalker. One of, yeah. Oh, I feel so bad, sister, that I don't remember your name as we're recording this. One of the sisters who used to work in South Jersey,
right?
Now worked at a school in Cana, and she had been following along on our journeys and knew that we were going to be in Cana the next day and literally stalked. We were like 500 yards, not even yards, probably 500 feet from the school.
Okay.
And she came and checked us out and said, "Hey, how you doing?" And Father Hughes and Bishop recognized her immediately.
Of course.
It was very sweet that she joined us. That was really nice.
That's so great. I wouldn't say she was a stalker. She was a fan.
Yeah, she was. If I'm just teasing, calling her a stalker.
Of course.
But we did have another sister in Assisi who was stalking us. But in this case, we turned the tables on her. No, we didn't. We didn't know she was stalking us at all. But we knew that she had come to South Jersey at one point recently. So we went and visited her convent. And while we were there, she says, "I've been following you guys all the way on your pilgrimage. Thank you so much for posting all the photos and the videos."
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so it was actually kind of nice to run into people overseas who had been following along on our posts.
That's really cool,
Yeah,
actually.
that was really cool. That was really neat. And we think that that particular nun might be coming, the one from Assisi might be coming back to the States sometime soon. We're hoping anyway.
Oh, I hope so.
Yeah, she's great. She's a young nun. She's very enthusiastic, very, very sweet. I mean, it would be great if she would come back. So, and there's pictures of her on the day before we went through Assisi. You'll see we visited her, and so that was nice. So yeah, so we went to Cana. It's like, so the thing with the trip to Israel was, people kept asking, "Are you? We can't wait till you come back because you're going to be changed." And what I said was, every single one of those people were selfish because they were hoping I was going to come back a better person, and you were one of them. But that's not how it works. If anything, I doubled down on the fact that this is what God wants me to do. To be me. No, just kidding. I think he's hoping that I'll improve, but this wasn't the way he was going to do it. No, what it did was it put everything in perspective in the Bible for me. Mm-hmm. So, I didn't know that, first of all, I didn't know that Nazareth was on the top of a mountain. I also didn't know that Nazareth is the mountain over from Mount Tabor, which is where the Transfiguration happened. So where Jesus lived and where, this momentous moment in his ministry occurs, was probably a day's walk, not even a day's walk from one to the other. And then I found out that the Valley of Darkness is a thing. I thought the Valley of Darkness was something, mentally you walk through,
or spiritually, a metaphor.
Though I walk through the Valley of Darkness, I know that you are protected because you are with me. No. The Valley of Darkness is a place that had robbers in it. And it was because it was a main trade route. And it's also because it was a main trade route, there was a ton of battles that were there. People like the Assyrians, that's what they wanted because they wanted the trade route. Mm-hmm. So, basically, it was a lot of bloodshed. Maybe that's why it's so fertile there. I don't know, because there's so much blood in the ground, dead bodies.
Oh.
Well, hey, I'm a science guy. But yeah, that's a real place. And then when we went to Galilee and actually went around where his ministry was, Jesus' ministry was, a lot of those areas are very close to each other. Mm-hmm. So, seeing where he gave the Sermon on the Mount. Okay, that was another example of I totally had this wrong my entire life. I thought Jesus was on the top of the mountain speaking down to the people.
Yeah, so did I.
Right. No, it's the other way around. So that the where that's done, it's like a natural amphitheater. So he was actually on the bottom and the people were above him and he was speaking up the whole time. So I was like, wow.
A whole different perspective.
Yeah, it completely changes how I it doesn't change the story at all.
No.
But it changes how I kind of perceive the story.
Right.
So then we actually got to go sailing on Lake Galilee, which was neat. Nothing particularly spiritual about it, but it was another view. So we were actually able to see where the Sermon on the Mount happens and the loaves and the fishes. So that was pretty cool. And then We also went to the place of, it's called the Church of Peter's Primacy. Basically, after Jesus rises, he's back on earth for 40 days, and he has a conversation. One day he makes breakfast for the apostles on the top of this rock. And afterwards, he and Peter go for a walk and basically asks Peter 3 times because, he had denied him 3 times.
Right.
So this time he talks to him 3 times and asks, will you be my, will you be the rock? Right. I build my church. So, and he says yes. And that's called the Church of Peter's Primacy because it essentially makes him the first pope. So while I was there, the tour guide, Rami, who was outstanding, Rami goes, if you want, you can take some stones from Lake Galilee. And I was like, well, I'm taking stones from Lake Galilee. So
Sure.
I pull some of them out. I try to take ones that look like stones that were natural from that area. And then the church that's there is actually built upon the rock where Jesus made breakfast. So you actually see the rock in the middle of the church, and the rock actually ebbs out of the church so it can be easily seen from the outside too.
Oh, wow.
And that's how a lot of the churches are there. They kind of surround the sites.
Okay.
The church is actually put on top of the site, and then the stone is in like the altar area.
Okay.
But this was a big giant rock, so some of the rock's outside of it. And while I was there, it says, holy site, do not get on, do not mess around. Well, I had seen that one of the pieces of rock had chipped off. And I was like, ooh, I'm going to take a piece of the rock.
The rock.
The rock.
Yeah.
So I see it just laying there on the ground, and I pick it up and I take it. And then I think to myself, I've seen horror movies, and this is how cursed things happen. And then a mummy's going to come and get me. So I put the rock back where I found it and said, no, not taking a holy rock back with me to Jersey.
I appreciate that because, you spend a lot of time at work, as we all do, and that mummy would absolutely be in this building.
And the thing is, as we discuss, we may or may not get to later, there's a zombie apocalypse that's going to happen in Jerusalem sometime, and I don't want to be anywhere near it.
Yeah. So,
but we'll get to that in a moment.
Yeah, that was actually really fascinating. Well, thank you very much for not bringing a mummy back.
Sure, no problem. So basically we spent as much time in Galilee as we could. We spent, I guess, like 3 days up there and saw all the sites. And then when we came down south to Jerusalem, we spent time in Jerusalem. We spent time in the West Bank. And, the West Bank is well known for the troubles between the Israelis and the Arabic peoples who occupy the West Bank. Mostly Muslims, but there's actually a lot of Arabic Christians in that area too. It's actually where most of the Christians are historically. So we actually got to go into the West Bank twice on 2 different days. Once we went to Bethlehem, which was awesome. I actually had one of the best lunches there. I had one of the best Italian meals ever in the West Bank because the shrine or the Basilica of Christ's birth, I can't remember what it's called, of the Nativity, is in Bethlehem. Bethlehem's on the West Bank. So you have to walk through this tiny little, and the place is kept by the Franciscans. So the Franciscans run that compound.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So we had lunch there, and we had lunch in their pilgrimage area, and it was one of the best Italian meals you've ever had in your entire life. It may have been the best Italian lunch I had on the entire trip, included while I was in Italy.
Wow,
it was
that
really
is a
good. It
bold
was well done.
statement.
Yeah, but that site is impressive because the holy areas themselves in Israel, the Catholic Church. So you know how there's a number of different rites of the Catholic Church. You have we're in the Roman Rite, and then there's the Latin Rite, there's the Greek Orthodox Rite, there's the Assyrian Catholics. So there's all these different Catholics, right? Well, in 2 of the holiest sites, one being in Bethlehem and the other being the Holy Sepulchre, the Catholic Church is actually the lowest of all the churches, so we have the least amount of rites. So in Bethlehem, we were not able to say Mass in the Basilica. The Catholic Church built a church right next to the Basilica so that we can actually say Mass there.
Okay.
I want to say it's St. Joseph's Church. And so we said Mass there, but then we were able to go into the Basilica, which is built on top of the manger, essentially. we were able to go down, and actually one of my favorite photos of the entire trip I took there. We were able to go. So basically, it's like getting into a concert, right? There's a mass of humanity that eventually funnels down until it's basically a one-person entrance to get into the manger, really. And when you go down there, what you find is the manger is not a it's not a wooden hut.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not a wooden.
It's a cave
structure.
It's a cave next to another cave. So where she had, okay, that's the other thing. And there's no such thing as an inn. In Jesus' time, you didn't have inns. What you had, so it's a mistranslation. There was no room for him at anybody's house, essentially. So no one had room on their living room floor for Jesus or for Mary and Joseph to stay. So all somebody was able to provide to them was the manger, and the manger was another cave with all the other animals in it. So so when you go into the basilica, you go through this thing, you go down this tunnel, and you can venerate the cave where Jesus was born, and then you can venerate the cave where Jesus was kept after when that's the manger. That's where he was put in with all the animals and stuff like that. And then you can get out because there's so many people, they are moving people through. So I didn't even I took a little bit of video, and I think I had to take a photo out of the video to put anything up there because I couldn't do both because you were in there so fast.
Is it dark? Was it dark in there?
It's well lit, but there's no easy way to do it.
Would it have been dark when Jesus was born? Put it that way. Because it's a cave, right? Is it deep or is it just kind of...
Well, no.
Okay.
It was like, that's the other thing is that in the Holy Land, and this is true in Rome too, everything's built upon. So the first century stuff is under everything. And then the Crusaders built something on top of it, and then the Byzantines came in and they destroyed it, and they put something on top of it over top of it. And then we put something over top of it later on. Okay. So there's like floors of everything, and you find that in almost every single site. But, people will often say, well, how do you know that was the manger?
Right.
Well, that's because when the angels came, they talked to a shepherd, and shepherds talked to everybody. Because shepherds they were gossip. Yes, exactly. They were the gossipers because they were out in the fields, right? And so if you were coming into town, the first person you would run across is a shepherd. So when the angels saw the shepherds, they tell the shepherds to go, do this. And then the shepherds told everybody else, this is where I went to do this. Mm-hmm. So these sites, because Jesus was a well-known person, and what happened, and Mary, the birth of the Messiah, the proposed, at that time, what people would have thought was the birth of the Messiah, that was a big deal. These were big deal sites. So even hundreds of years later, they would still be considered big deal sites.
Okay.
So when these things were put up in the 4th century, we have it on fairly good. We think that it's fairly accurate to say that these are the locations. Okay. There are other places in Jerusalem and Israel that, can't say that. We actually stopped by a church for different reasons that claims to be the spot where Jesus first uttered the Our Father, but everybody knows it's not that. But it's run by the French, and the French just want everyone to believe it. So, but they did. But it's a nice church. So I basically got a picture of everything. So while we're in the West Bank, these are all on different days, by the way. We also went to Jericho, which is the oldest city in the world. It's been the oldest consistently lived in city on Earth, having been people have lived there for 10,000 years. It's pretty incredible. And then so we went to Jericho. Then we went to Jordan.
Right.
Jordan and okay, so the reason why it's called the West Bank, which I've never understood,
right. Why
is it on the eastern side of the country and called the West Bank? Because it's the West Bank of the Jordan. So the Jordan is to the east of the West Bank. So that's why it's called the West Bank. And while we were there, we actually got to go to where, there's actually a bunch of spiritual sites run by various different churches on the Jordan, giving people the opportunity to see where Jesus was baptized.
Right.
it's on fairly good authority that he was actually baptized on the Jordanian side. So when I took my photos, I made sure to get our side and the Jordanian side. But it was kind of cool because you see the Israeli side on one side, and it's a small river. It's basically a creek.
That's what's, I think, fascinating.
Yeah.
I remember seeing some of the photos, like, you're thinking, oh, it's just like huge, like a Mississippi River or something like that, but it's not.
Yeah. Matter of fact, if you look at the photo that's posted with this podcast, it's me on the Jordan, and you can see it's me on one side, and you can see the Jordanian Christian or the Jordanian Spiritual Center on the other side.
No, are you allowed to, like, do you go in the water? Do you just dip a hand in?
You can dip a hand in. You
Okay.
can put your whole body in. A lot of people were getting baptized while we were there. They were dressed in their white robes. You can actually like buy a white robe and get baptized.
Huh. Like rebaptized? Or baptized for the first time?
I didn't ask.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Okay.
Oh, you can't in Catholic faith. You can't get rebaptized. You baptized once, but I don't know if these were other people who were being baptized for the first time.
Right.
I saw a lot of old, bald, hairy men that were getting baptized. So who knows? I don't know. I didn't ask what the deal was. I tend to avoid those people. But I don't know. So that was basically, and then I went to the Dead Sea.
This is what I want to hear about. I want to hear about the Dead Sea.
We only got 10 minutes left of this podcast, but I'll give you the short version.
Yeah.
So the Dead Sea is the lowest place on Earth. It was funny because it's ringed in mountains.
Okay.
And the mountains, even the tops of the mountains, are below sea level. That's how far down.
That's
it is.
crazy.
Yeah, isn't it crazy? So,
is it deep?
the water?
Yeah.
Not, well, where we were, it wasn't. I don't know if it's deeper elsewhere.
Okay.
It's been shrinking. It's actually much lower than it used to be, like everything else.
Yeah.
So I did go into it. It was incredibly slippery. And so I went and changed, went into the water. First thing I did was fall on my butt. And then I immediately got up and fell on my butt again.
I hope there were witnesses.
Oh, they were laughing. I made everybody's day. But it wasn't, and the thing was,
Thank you, pilgrims.
Well, that's the thing. It wasn't my pilgrims. It was other people.
Oh, no way.
I did it in complete strangers. Although one person, I actually handed my camera off to somebody else and said, hey, can you get some pictures? So I'm not going to take my camera in there. And thank God I didn't.
Yes.
And she got some great photos of me falling on my butt.
Oh.
So after the second fall, I decided, well, I don't really have to get up because I can just float. So that's what I did. I just floated in like a foot of water. And it absolutely kept me completely out of the water.
You were completely
I was
buoyed up.
Yeah, I was completely buoyant. It was like Father said, the salt content in there is so thick you literally cannot drown. What you can do is die, however. So what they said was, do not swim, do not jump in, and do not swim, because one mouthful of that stuff can send you to the hospital.
Oh my goodness!
Because
salt.
The ocean has like 3% salt,
right,
and the Dead Sea has like 33% salt.
Holy moly!
Yeah, so it was. So I did not swim. I just hung out on my back. I was only in there for maybe a minute.
Did it feel like?
Yeah.
Or smell salty or something?
It absolutely felt like I had a sheen on me the rest of the day. I actually did go home and take a shower. Went back to the room and took a shower because I did feel mildly gross.
Yeah. Was it muddy?
Yes, that's why I fell twice.
Okay.
It was like ice under there. It was so slick.
Holy cow!
Yeah.
All right.
And I got out of there and threw away my shoes because I can't do anything with these, which is what Father said was going to happen. So I took garbage shoes with me.
Right.
And then we hung up and we headed up and just hung out for a little while and we came back in. And then the big deal was Jerusalem the next day, which was when we did the Via Dolorosa, which is basically the Stations of the Cross. But we did them at like 4 a.m. and we did stations in Jerusalem where they occurred, or at least where we believe they occurred.
Right.
And the stations ends at the Holy Sepulchre, which is basically the site of the Passion specifically. So the last five stations are in the Holy Sepulchre, but you pray them outside and then you visit them inside. So, like I said, everything in Israel is built on top of the thing. So the Holy Sepulchre basically surrounds the bedrock where Jesus' crucifix was put into the ground, right? And so there's at the very top, you go up these steps, and there's chapels all over the building. And you go up the steps, and you can reach your hand in underneath the altar and touch the bedrock where the crucifix was. And then, Did
you get to do that?
Yeah, absolutely we did. I was one of the last people to do it, but I have video of Bishop doing it. I have a ton of photos of other people doing it.
Wow.
Someone took pictures of me. And all they really did was get a picture of my butt. So I don't think those photos are going to see the light of day. But
Wait, they're not in the photo gallery?
I don't think so.
You need to go back and add them.
I can't promise that. So then you go down, and then you go back down, and then you go to where the tomb is.
Yeah.
And we were lucky enough to be able to have mass in the tomb. So, but there were 51 of us. So the Holy Sepulchre is where the tomb is actually a very small area. Mm-hmm. And it's separated by a wall. So the pilgrims were on the outside in the sort of anteroom, and the inside was where the priests actually celebrated Mass in the tomb of Christ. And then during communion, we were able to actually crawl on our knees and go into the tomb, venerate the slab where he was laid, and then come back out again. That's a moment I haven't really come to grips with yet, because, I mean...
How do you?
Christ, how does a moron from South Jersey end up in Christ's tomb? Like, I don't even think it was appropriate for me to be there as, me. Like, you want to talk about the hypocrisy of a jaded PR person being allowed to be in the tomb of Christ. I mean, every single one of the listeners should have been there before I was, and yet I was given this opportunity. I think that's where people think, maybe there'll be a change in my heart because I had that opportunity, and maybe there will be. I have a feeling I'll be thinking about these things for years to come. But yeah, so that was amazing. So
you're crawling on your knees to go in there and also get the Eucharist? So
we actually did communion in the anteroom. Okay. And then after you took communion, you went in there. But it was so small and it was so tight in there. So there were actually 4 priests at that point, because we picked up a random priest at one point. So it was our 3 priests and this other guy. And then we would, at 3 at a time, there wasn't enough room in there. So 3 at a time, we could basically crawl in, venerate the slab, and then come out again.
My mind, my spiritualness, I'll put it that way, I can't even wrap my mind around that. Like, no. You have the Eucharist, and then you touch the Eucharist in a way, the body of Christ. That's where it was. Yeah. That's where he was. Yeah. What'd you say a second ago? You don't think you fully processed it? It might be something. I don't know. I think that would be something that you probably will revisit for a long time to come.
I hope so. Yeah, I was talking to Father Hughes about it today, and he says he still thinks it's an amazing thing that he gets that opportunity to do that. Sure. He says it's not the best place to have a Mass for that big a group of people. If we were half the size, right, I think it might have even been more like being crammed in there like that. Hindsight being 20/20, he thinks it might have been better to have the Mass in one of these side chapels. But, once again, who's going to pass up that experience?
No kidding. Yeah. I'd be like, oh, no, I want to be in there.
Yeah. So we have like 3 minutes left of this podcast, and I'm sure I'll talk about stuff later. But so I've kind of explained it to people that there was the Jerusalem experience, or the Israel experience, which was really the spiritual, right? And like that was like everything is for me so much more in focus now because I went there. So yes, it was spiritual. I still think at the moment most of what I got out of it was the educational. And then about half our party went to Italy, where we spent a day and a half in Assisi and got to go to the Basilica of St. Clare, the Basilica of St. Francis, the site, basically the headquarters of the Franciscans.
Headquarters.
Yeah. I had my first coffee while I was there. I had 3 espressos and 1 cappuccino while I was in Italy. And I'm not a coffee person, so that was quite a thing.
You're going to have one here now that you're back and see what you think about
here's the deal. I've decided that I will drink coffee, but only when appropriate. If I'm in a nice Italian restaurant and they know what they're doing, I'll have a espresso or something like that. But I'm not going to start going and getting my Wawa or Dunkin' or Starbucks. And then, come on. What am I, a commoner? So
no, Mr. Walsh, there is one thing nobody can accuse you of, and it is being a commoner.
I am an elitist. Somebody complained to me that they like my videos, but they wish I had talked to more of the pilgrims. Okay. And I was like, that's not my thing. And also
people.
Yeah. Well, number 1, people. Number 2, the pilgrims were just as bewildered as me. Sure. So that's not like I wanted to talk to the people who know stuff. So I only really did one interview, and that was with Rami, our Israel tour guide and Father Hughes. That one vanished off of social media, but I still have it. So
Good.
I'm gonna re-up that at some point. And then the rest of Israel, you know, we got to see the tomb of Blessed Carlo Acutis, which was really cool. And you know, there he is behind glass in jeans and sneakers and a hoodie, and that was pretty powerful. And then we got to spend a day or two in Rome, seeing all the sites, going to all the major basilicas. Went to the Vatican, had a audience with the Pope. Pope gave a general blessing to all the pilgrims who were there to bless our stuff, all the religious relics we had gotten. So I brought back a whole bunch of religious stuff for all of my colleagues and family members that had been blessed by the Pope. And so that was great. I also ate a ton, and just to mess with people, decided to go to a McDonald's in Rome. But I will tell you, that was the best McDonald's I'd ever had in my entire life. So it was still worth it. But I had some of the best meals, and I got to see Father Michael Romano, who's at the Pontifical North American College. I got a full tour of the college. It was a great experience, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of these things later on, but it was great.
Well, I am really glad that you shared your trip with us. Thank you very much.
Sure.
I'm glad that you're back.
Thank you.
I really mean that too. I'm glad you're back.
Well, that's only because you heard I was going to try and get you a raise.
That's true.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Well, we'll talk to you again next week. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
See ya.